All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. Today, we're doing the video that we typically do on Wednesdays, but it's Friday, so we're doing it today. On Wednesday, we did our best X for rank video. Today, we're doing our Wednesday video, which is typically our off-meta showcase, our wacky Wednesday video. But it's Friday, so I don't know what you call it. Far out Friday is what we're calling it. I don't know. You guys can comment down below. But anyway, guys, the point of this video series, and we do it every week, is to not only highlight results and players, which we always like to do here on the channel, but also to showcase that there's tournaments all throughout the week. The metagame is being progressed and developed, not just on the weekends when we do our PMPT tournament series. By the way, PMPT number 20 is tomorrow at noontime. Go register. But there's a ton of other link to register down in the description below. It's down there. Go and play. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But yeah, a bunch of tournaments and players competing all throughout the week. And sometimes at these smaller tournaments, you know, during midweek, like there's some really surprising outcomes and results. And that's kind of what we highlight here. I think that especially these days in Pokemon Pocket, the metagame becomes so condensed. You know, I think everybody kind of has a perception that, you know, the same kind of, 2 or 3 decks at the top of the metagame like is the meta, but you'd be surprised just how many decks do very well that aren't really considered to be, at the forefront of the metagame. Anyway, that's the intro. Let's get right into it. The first deck that we're going to take a look at is Kabasu from Japan. I'm going to butcher all the names and I apologize. This is at the Umbreon 99 Storms Late Night Pop-Up number 3, and this is going to be Snorlax and Indeedee. So if you were following the broadcast of our PMPT tournament last weekend, you saw like the Steelix Indeedee deck go absolutely insane, made it all the way to top 4. It was a really, really interesting run. This is basically that. This is basically the exact same deck, but instead of playing Steelix, which is a stage 1 Pokemon, we're playing Snorlax EX, which is a 2-prize Pokemon, not a Mega, so it's got less HP, but it plays virtually the exact same way, and it's actually a really fun deck list. So the cool thing about Snorlax as opposed to Steelix is that you can kind of rely a little bit more on maybe having your opponent have to go through 2 Pokemon, whether that's 2 Snorlaxes or a Snorlax and Indeedee, instead of just winning the game off of 1 Steelix. Other than that, the deck is played virtually the exact same way. So as you see, Snorlax EX here has 160 HP with Heavy Helmet. That reduces the amount of damage that it takes by 20. And also the Full Mouth Manner ability of Snorlax means that it heals 20 damage every turn. So it's like minus 40 plus Indeedee, 40 more. That's minus 80 effectively every turn, which is really difficult to deal with, alongside, of course, everybody's favorite new card, Lucky Ice Pop. And that's the deck. So Lucky Ice Pops, we even have a potion, a Big Malasada, double Pokemon Center ladies. Because the thing about Snorlax, as opposed to Steelix, is that it does 130 damage, but it puts itself asleep after it attacks, which, can be healed off pretty easily with Malasada, as well as, Pokemon Center lady. So it's really not that big of a deal. But this is a very, very effective deck into a ton of different strategies in the current metagame. It really is like an actually really competitively viable deck. This player, by the way, was 10-2-1, made it all the way to grand finals. It won. I think he won this tournament. Yeah, he got first place, which is pretty crazy. An incredible run, beat a ton of meta decks, as you see. So, lost once to Altaria, lost once to Charizard. Charizard is certainly the card that would beat these types of strategies, but, when you compare it to basically everything else that's active in the metagame, it actually is pretty well positioned. So I really like it. Now, the one thing that stands out to me, and probably you as well, when you see this deck, is that you just can't ever beat Oricorio. It's actually like a fundamental issue recently in some online tournaments, is that if this Snorlax deck goes up against an Oricorio, whether it's late in bracket or in grand finals or something, the game can never end. Oricorio decks will never be able to deal enough damage to get around the Snorlax stuff. So it basically is a game that will never end because Snorlax can't damage Oricorio to any degree. So tournament organizers have been trying to figure out kind of how to deal with that interaction, which is pretty funny. But yeah, this is a deck list that actually is quite good. Very similar to the Steelix deck. It's a little bit more consistent in that sense. Now, Steelix doesn't have that problem because you can play Onyx before you evolve to Steelix, which allows you to KO Oricorio quite easily, actually. So it's a different deck in that sense, but Oricorio is becoming less and less prevalent in the metagame thanks to our good friend, thanks to our acquaintance in the metagame, Hydreigon. But anyway, this Snorlax deck is very prominent. It's been doing quite well in various tournaments. First place here, Kabasu in this tournament. Very, very cool. Shout out to him. Shout out to Snorlax and Indeedee. I think these types of strategies, these Heavy Helmet and Indeedee core strategies, really only work with a few Pokemon like Snorlax with Steelix, but I think that they're way more viable now, mainly just because of Lucky Ice Pop. I think Lucky Ice Pop has brought these types of archetypes actually into the metagame, which is a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you categorize these decks. But anyway, there it is. Next up at the Storm's late night pop-up is Giratina Darkrai, but guess what? They're playing Mega Absol. 10-2 Hoshi from Japan is the record, and I believe he also won this tournament. This is another first place tournament, which is crazy, and you gotta love it. But anyway, let's take a look here at the deck list. So again, all of the decks in this video did very well, and I know these are probably smaller tournaments, but you know, a lot of really high-level players playing these tournaments. So, yeah, this is Giratina Darkrai with a Mega Absol thrown in. And I thought that this was absolutely, like, super confusing. I was like, how would Absol work in Giratina Darkrai? Mainly because the whole aspect of this deck is that you Broken Space Bellow and then you attach to Darkrai for the chip damage. So where does Absol fit into that? Because you have to get energies onto Absol to attack. Well, as you can probably see here in this particular deck, they are playing 2 copies of Dawn. And this is a very interesting thing to me. Darkrai has a retreat cost of 2. So, you know, in a world where you kind of do, you know, lead off with Giratina and you Broken Space Bellow, maybe get an attack off, you've been attaching to Darkrai the whole time. Instead of having to go into that Darkrai, what you can do is instead of after Giratina gets KO'd, you go into Mega Absol, and then you just don 1 energy from the Darkrai, you attach for that turn, and all of a sudden, now you have to go through a Giratina EX and an Absol EX. So a very interesting sort of combo here. And I quite like the deck list. We're playing Starting Plains, Rocky Helmets for boosted damage. We have Mars in the deck, double Mars in the deck, by the way, and double Lucky Ice Pop. So, you know, as far as decks go, this is probably one of the more frustrating things to have to play against. But, you know, Giratina Darkrai so far this season sort of has been here. It's been prevalent, but it really hasn't done a whole lot. Its average win rate hasn't been that high. But I think that this Absol deck actually has a ton of potential. I think that this is something that I really would like to explore a bit more because, again, the prospect of having to go through a Giratina with Starting Plains with Rocky Helmet, with Lucky Ice Pops, also getting the chip damage from Darkrai, but then having to go through a Mega Absol to end the game. Like, you Mars to 1, you go into Absol, and you just hit until the game's over. Like, it really is a strategy that I think is very interesting. Now, the scary part about this deck list, of course, is, you know, when you're going up against Greninja decks, you can't really ever bench the Absol until the turn that you're kind of looking to play it because, you know, it's a liability. It really is. So that's the scary part about this deck. So you got to play around that a little bit, but a very, very cool strategy. One that I actually do want to test myself because I'm actually really, really excited about the prospect of a deck like this. If we take a look at the matchup spreads, look at the win rates against these Greninja decks. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. So he beat 1, lost to 2 here, beat another one, and then beat 3 in a row, all Suicune Greninjas as well, and beat all of these Altaria decks. So it's a very, very, very interesting prospect. One that I think has a ton of potential in the metagame. I know this is a Japanese player. They might not be watching today's video, but if you're interested in Giratina Darkrai or maybe progressing it a little bit farther, try out this deck, test it out. Let me know what you guys think. It's something that I'm definitely going to test myself. So shout out to Hoshi, I don't know how to say the name, and his deck list. Very, very cool. Dawn, Mega Absol, Giratina, Darkrai. This is kind of what I think a lot of people expected, you know, at this point in the metagame, if you were to go back like 4 months, right? But anyway, here we go. Next up at the Chaos League Pocket Saturdays is Neo Valkyrie from Canada, and this is Flareon Leafeon, guys. You know, this is a deck that I think a lot of people forgot about, quite frankly, but a deck that's been buffed. This is an archetype, again, that I think has a lot of merit to it. I think Flareon is a pretty undervalued card in the metagame. And now we have further damage modification in a card like Training Arena, which pairs extremely well with this deck list. Not only buffing all of our attacking Pokemon, but is very low impact in the sense that, you know, you can just sort of play it and then you can kind of use it in the future. Not a lot of decks are playing Stadium. Some are, but not a ton of decks play Stadium. So they're actually a little bit safer to play and then hold on to for the remainder of the game than you might think they are. But anyway, Training Arena is going to give Flareon 10 more damage. That's 140, but we still have the EV bag. So now we can go 140, 160, maybe even 180 damage. That's a very relevant amount of damage, trust me, with Flareon. And of course, Leafeon as sort of the frontline option, the small Leafeon to get around Orcorios. I really like the deck. I really, really do. One of the few decks in the game that I think can very well utilize Sightseer. That's right. So Sightseer is a card that it really isn't a bad card. It's just, it's so niche. Like, you have to play a deck so specifically, only compromised of a stage 1 Pokemon, that makes Sightseer worth playing. And I think that this is a perfect example of where we would play Sightseer. So kind of what you would want, right? Training Arena, Sightseer, these are cards that buff these stage 1 archetypes, and, you know, I mean, this is certainly a stage 1 archetype. I think all of the evolution decks actually benefit from these types of cards, so they're really cool to see, and I think that this is a very interesting strategy. Flareon has 150 HP, which is a really good number, arguably, I would say, or inarguably. I think 150 is a lot better than 140 in the metagame, so Flareon should be able to live an attack from a lot of things in the metagame, which is really fun. And again, the potential to 1-8 KO Hydreigon and Suicunes, things like that. I really like this deck. I think there's a lot of prospects here. And again, Leafeon hitting for weakness, being able to turn 2, get those KOs on those dinos before they can evolve. Or dinos? I don't know. But a really awesome deck, a really, really fun deck. And again, I think there's a ton of creativity that, you know, is possible in Pokemon Pocket. I really do think so. And I think that this season, there's just so many things that actually have been buffed and are actually probably somewhat viable. It's just, of course, you know, popularity always kind of reigns supreme. So things sort of interject themselves into the metagame early on, and that's just what people play, i.e. Hydreigon, Altaria, Suicune, but there's a lot of other stuff. And that's what this video is really all about. Shout out to Neo Valkyrie for the very, very cool deck list. Go try it out yourselves. Next up, it's going to be at the King Solomon Aiden's Tail Whip tournament. So this is going to be PF Satoshi from Puerto Rico, who got first place yet again playing Mimikyu and Greninja. And I just wanted to highlight this because I know that this is a deck we've covered before, but I really do think that this is something that people should probably consider to be like a real meta strategy. I would not be surprised if this deck list ended up being like a top 5 deck in the game. And I know a lot of people probably look at this and they go, wow, it's another Greninja deck. Like, do we really care? A lot of people are pretty biased towards Greninja decks. They just don't want to play it. But this is a new strategy, and this is kind of like a really interesting in-between of something like an Altaria Greninja, which is definitely strong and high roll, but maybe something more consistent, maybe in line with something like a Suicune and Greninja. So it's kind of the mix of both of those types of archetypes. I think that the synergy between Mimikyu EX and Greninja is really, really high. And again, I just wanted to highlight this deck because it really is like a true meta contender. I think multiple tournaments this week had Mimikyu get first place, so it is a significant deck in the metagame and has a winning matchup into Hydreigon, which is actually really significant. I think coincidentally, this deck does actually lose to Suicune, but there's really not a lot of Suicune seeing play, relatively speaking, to Hydreigon. So I think that this is a really great addition to the metagame, and I think Mimikyu is probably the best new Pokemon that we got, at least in terms of how it's positioned in the current metagame, and it pairs very well with Greninja. I know some people are just not going to want to play it because it's Greninja, but 11-1 is the record. Take a look at this. Lost its first round here into Kangaskhan Greninja, and then just rattled off a bunch of wins in a row, like a ton. Beat like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sweet Hydreigons on his way. Beat a couple of Altarias as well. Just a really, really strong deck. And the nice thing about this deck is that you're not negatively affected by Chingling item lock, which is of course a very significant factor. You know, Giratina's high HP amount, Rocky Helmets, plus the Mimikyu's disguise ability. It's actually really good into Mega Pokemon like Altaria. So a very, very good deck. Something that I just wanted to highlight once again, because I don't want people to sleep on this deck. I want people to know that this is a top tier meta strategy currently in the metagame. So very, very cool. And shout out to PF Satoshi. Satoshi? I don't know. At the Brick City Monday tournament here is Danico, who went 7-3. This is going to be Greninja with Kangaskhan. And I know, I get it. Another Greninja deck, so like what's going on here? But I think realistically, Kangaskhan is a Pokemon that is kind of undervalued in the sense. I think a lot of people try to pair it with Oricorio early in the season, which really put it into a box. And not that I think that it pairs poorly with Oricorio. I just think that if you're playing a 3-prize Pokemon in Oricorio, it's kind of a counterproductive strategy. So this is a deck that actually really leans into Greninja, which, you know, I think is also, again, one of the best cards in the entire game. But we're playing Mantike. So Mantike can not only boost Kangaskhan to be like a really aggro attacker, but we're playing double Ilima. And this is a very significant thing here because Kangaskhan in the active spot has a ton of HP and it can soak up damage. So if we get the Greninjas online, then we can kind of stall for a while. You know, we really can. Like, those additional pings with Greninja are going to be really relevant. We could use Mantike to set up a Greninja if we wanted to attack with Greninja. That's turn 2, rare candy, 80 damage on a Greninja EX. That can KO a lot of Pokemon and do a lot of damage. So I really like it as well. So this is a strategy that just doesn't employ Oricorio. And I think that's sort of a unique aspect about this deck list. So I wanted to highlight it because I think it's similar to what we've seen in the past, but definitely not a bad deck list as we see here. You know, lost to Suicune Greninja, lost to Magnus and Oricorio, lost to Hydreigon, but beat all of those decks as well at some point in the tournament. So a really respective run. A respectable run, I should say, and a very cool deck. You know, I get it. It's Greninja, so people are like, you know, but that's the metagame. Like, Greninja is such a valuable card that you just have to understand a lot of cards are just going to be really good if you play with Greninja. So, you know, just keep an open mind moving forward. Next up, at the Umbreon 99 tournament here is Guy 177 from the US, and this is Mega Charizard. Again, I know a deck that people are pretty familiar with. 8-3 was the run here. Made it very far into the tournament. Ended up losing to Mimikyu and Greninja, which is crazy. Lost to a Hydreigon twice, but beat a couple of Hydreigons as well. So a pretty good run overall. Did good into Suicune and just a variety of decks, as we see here, beat the Snorlax Indeedee deck. So I think that Charizard is actually kind of one of the sneakiest like Pokemon or strategies in the active metagame. I think if you take a look at this entire season, Charizard should be much more respected than it has been. And I think that the deck hasn't really changed a whole lot. We do see one Lucky Ice Pop in here. I think Lucky Ice Pop actually is really strong with Entei. That's something that we should probably explore a little bit more. The longer Entei's in the active, the more value it can provide. So Lucky Ice Pop's definitely going to help out with that. But yeah, Charizard is really not bad. It's had a very respectable win rate all season, and I think that it's kind of just a good Pokemon. I think that people slept on Charizard from the moment it released. I think it's a little bit more well-positioned right now in the metagame than it ever has been. I think the only thing really holding this back is kind of the Hydreigon high roll stuff, which makes things a little bit sketchy for sure. But Charizard is an incredibly powerful Pokemon, and I love the inclusion of the OG Crimson Charizard here, because this Charizard discards energies. I get that. But what it doesn't do is damage itself, right? So this Charizard's able to come in, attack, and then attack again without like the scary part of potentially going down, because this Charizard's at 180 HP, right? But this Charizard not only does 50 damage to itself with 220, so it goes to 170 after it attacks, but, you know, there's a lot of that Poison Barb Nihilego stuff going around with Hydreigon. So that 170 ends up kind of becoming 150 or sometimes 140. So you can't really keep this in the active spot nearly as well as you can this Charizard, which is going to help you a lot into Hydreigon. I really like the strategy as well. Lucky Ice Pop's going to have good synergy with Charizard, just in general as well. So I like Charizard. I just wanted to remind people that people are still playing it. It is still a viable meta strategy, and it's something that I definitely would still kind of recommend. Like, it's in the metagame, it's prevalent, and I think that it could definitely, you know, win tournaments or place really highly in any tournament. So again, I think, again, you just have to look beyond the top, you know, layer, you know, of the metagame, right? Which, again, I understand is Hydreigon and Altaria and Suicunes, but below that, there's a ton of really interesting stuff going on, and I think that all it takes is just one of those decks to do really well at a tournament or whatever, and then they kind of becomes popular. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight Charizard because it's still around and it's still doing well. Next up is Bao, or Bao? I don't know how to say the name. From Japan, 11-2-1 at the B2 ranked pocket warm-up number 4. And this is the Mega Steelix Indeedee deck. So I just wanted to highlight this yet again because it's an example of somebody, not just the one time at our tournament this past weekend that did well, but made it all the way to grand finals. I think won the tournament, actually. He might have literally gotten first place. Maybe not. Why does this say F? I don't know. But anyway, was very high up in the standings playing Steelix. So this is yet again another strategy that I think has a ton of potential. And it was kind of a flash in the pan, like Cinderella run at our tournament this past weekend. But you know, if we see Steelix again in top 8 or top 4 this weekend, again, it's not really something to be that surprised about. This is a very, very, very strong deck. A lot of things in the game are just not really going to be able to contend quite well with a double Indeedee Mega Steelix. Like, it does kind of just win the game. It's a bit of a slow roll deck, so some things in the game can kind of, you know, outpace it, but you know, at the end of the day, Brock is a bit of a high roll card in the sense that, you know, you can get that Steelix out on turn 3 sometimes on turn 2 technically, which, you know, would be absolutely broken, but it is possible. And that possibility does kind of make Steelix have a little bit more, you know, explosive high roll type potential than it otherwise would just be a really slow deck. So Brock's not the best card ever, like by any stretch, but definitely not a bad card at all. And I think Mega Steelix is a very quality deck. So I wanted to highlight just another example of it doing well at a tournament other than our tournament this past weekend. 11-2-1, Bao? I don't know. Anyway, shout out to him. Love it. Love the deck. Next up is going to be AI 2112 from Sweden, 8-4. This is a very spicy deck, so I wanted to highlight it just because, you know, it didn't win anything. It did go 8-4, so it lost here in like top 4, I think it was, to Suicune and Greninja, but beat a lot of really interesting meta decks. So a strategy that I think is really, really unique, and I just wanted to highlight it. This is going to be Banette, Nightbind Banette with Mimikyu, Tapu Lele, Team Rocket Grunt. So kind of a control-based Mimikyu deck, which, you know, is kind of the other way that you can play it. I understand, like, Greninja's Greninja, so that's going to be a very viable way to play the deck list, but you know, you got Banette here to stall your opponent so that they can't attach any energies. That's going to be really relevant to lock Mega Pokemon in the active. You know, Team Rocket Grunt, it pairs really well with Banette, and then of course we have Mimikyu, which is going to be a guaranteed 140 damage here. So Sabrina, we have Cyrus, we have PCL, Peculiar Plaza for free retreat. We got bench damage with Tapu Lele, which you would think is kind of counterproductive to play Tapu Lele in a deck that can't deal or attach energies to their Pokemon and place you know, energy discarding with Team Rocket Grunt, but it actually makes a lot of sense in the sense that It's not a bad leadoff Pokemon ever. It's got a decent amount of HP, and if we are going into Banette, then basically they're forced to commit energies to their bench Pokemon, which means Tapu Lele can come in and hit that bench Pokemon, and then, you know, kind of get things started from there. So it's actually a really smart inclusion to this deck list, and a very unique deck. You know, it's just, I think Banette's been sort of fringe meta for a long time, and I think that the whole Mimikyu stuff actually does have some good synergy with it. So another very interesting strategy that I wanted to highlight. I don't think strategies like Team Rocket Grunt Banette will ever be at the forefront of the metagame, but certainly can win games. So, you know, again, it's making it into today's video. Shout out to AI2112 in his deck list. Next up, La Muerte Pinto. Again, I'm horrible with the names. From Dominican Republic, 8-3 at the ranked pocket warm-up as well. This is Ho-Oh. Yeah, this is like Ho-Oh Snorlax stuff. Like with, does this play? No, hold on, let me check. It does not play Juggler, which is important to note. I really don't think Juggler's a good card. I don't think there's like a prominent use for it. But this is Ho-Oh Lugia with Darkrai and Snorlax, which is a really fun, interesting deck list that I just kind of like, right? So we're playing double Iloma, we're playing starting planes, buffs all of the HP of all of these Pokemon, which is really cool. I think that Ho-Oh really isn't that bad. And I think that you know, these 180 damage attacks from Lugia are actually pretty relevant, considering that there's a lot of these Mega Pokemon within KO range, especially when you pair them with Rocky Helmet or the Darkrai ping damage. It's an interesting deck because it plays Dark Energies. So you play one Darkrai and Dark Energies, and I think that's really just to kind of get over like the hump, right? So like once we kind of get Ho-Oh all set up and we get an attack off and we go into Snorlax or into Lugia, like you can commit those additional energies to Darkrai to boost the damage of these Pokemon. And it's just, you know, it's never going to be, I don't want to say it's never going to be, but Ho-Oh Lugia's never been like the greatest strategy in the game. But I think right now in the metagame, like Lugia is as good as it probably ever has been in a very strange way. You know, Giant Cape plus Starting Planes is plus 40 HP to any of these Pokemon. So nothing's one-hit KOing them. And Lugia is definitely sort of a one-hit KO type Pokemon. But in a world of Mega Pokemon, and quite a few actually that are within that sort of 180, 190, 200 HP range, I actually quite like Lugia. I honestly do. And again, you know, double Iloma Snorlax in the active to kind of allow you to bench attach to Ho-Oh until it's ready to go. You know, Greninja can mess up this deck a little bit, but I really do like it. It's a very interesting strategy. Double Leaf and double Iloma. So very much about setting up the bench, but without any Poncho. So the Greninja stuff's probably a little bit suspect anyway, but hey, a very cool deck, very creative deck list. 8-3, shout out to this player here. Beat a ton of Hydreigon in Suicunes and stuff, which is pretty cool. Well, I guess he went 1-1 into Suicune. Lost to the Giratina Darkrai Hosey playing the Mega Absol deck, which is kind of crazy actually when you think about it. But yeah, a really good run. A really interesting deck. Shout out to this player here. And again, just like the perfect type of deck that you would want, or that I would want to feature in a video like this today. So you got to love it. Next up is going to be Chiha Rotsure from Japan. And this is the Leafeon Celebi deck that we highlighted as the wild card deck on Wednesday's video because it got first place at a tournament at the Umbreon 99 Tuesday Showdown. He got first place playing Celebi Leafeon. Very, very cool. So let's highlight it just quickly once again. This is Superior Jungle Totem Celebi. So this is like high roll grass. This is high roll Celebi, just in a nutshell. Again, I don't know, like I said it on Friday, like I don't know if I have a ton of confidence in this deck list just per se. But you know, with Quick Growth Extract, with May, with Copycat, the game right now, Pokemon Pocket has so many cards that make strategies like this way more consistent than they used to be, which I think actually does add a little bit of validity to this deck list. We also have boosted Evolution EV to kind of get a little bit ahead of the curve in generating additional energies. And as we always know, Celebi's damage potential is kind of infinite. So in a world of 3 prize Pokemon, Celebi definitely is something to look at, as well as just something that can one-hit KO these Mega Pokemon and win you the game, which is kind of crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight it once again, because again, I just, you know, I put it on the video Wednesday, but I never like showcased their run. So this is the player, this is their run, this is their matches here. Just an absolutely insane run, seemingly very good into Hydreigon. So anything that beats Hydreigon is a W in my book. Shout out to Chia Rotsure, and I'm probably saying the name wrong and I apologize, but anyway, shout out to him. Next up is going to be Pingo Volante from Italy. Man, I'm so bad at the names. I'm so sorry for everybody that I can't say your name in today's video. Also at the Umbreon Tuesday Showdown here, 9-2 from Italy. And this is going to be Indeedee with Stoutland. So yet again, another deck here Stoutland is a little bit different than like the Steelix and Snorlax strategies, but does kind of pair pretty well with Indeedee as you know, a frontline attacker. You can finish the games with attacking with Indeedee. The aspect of Stoutland here is that the Guard Dog Visage, which means that once it's in play, your opponent needs additional energies to use their attacks, which is actually pretty relevant because that means that we get to be like a turn ahead, right? And if you're already a turn ahead, meaning you went second, and if your opponent has to attach yet another energy, there are some decks that really get affected by this. So it's a very interesting strategy. Stoutland, yet again, been kind of fringe meta for quite some time. Nothing new to the deck list, so this is a very kind of old school deck, but a deck that I think can always win. It can always win. You know, imagine going up against like a Snorlax, but they go first or something, or I don't know, like it doesn't even matter, like a Suicune, but they go first, so we can attack on turn 2, but now they need 3 energies to attack, so they can attack until turn 4. You can kind of see where this is going with Stoutland, and then Indeedee to kind of heal up some extra damage, as well as be a backup attacker. So I really like the deck. I really like this type of strategy. Big shout out to Pingo Volante. I can't say the name. It's so bad. I'm so bad at it. But anyway, yeah, kind of an oldie, but a goodie, and has been, of course, had a good run in this tournament. So I wanted to highlight it. You know what I mean? That's what we do here. That's what it's all about. Lastly is going to be K-Tech, 3224 from Canada at the UU tournament, number 10. 6-2-1, so not the most insane record of all time, but this is just a crazy deck list, an absolutely crazy deck. This is the run that he went on. This is Espeon, Sylveon, with Altaria, with Indeedee, so it's just like everything. It's just a massive psychic like toolbox deck, which I actually kind of like. I think that the Sylveon Espeon stuff has seen play with Altaria before and with Indeedee, but now we have Peculiar Plaza, and I think Peculiar Plaza is a very interesting prospect for decks like Sylveon Espeon with the free retreat. Not only that, but as we see Training Arena to buff the damage of all of these stage 1 Pokemon, it's really fun, you know, and I think that this Sylveon here is a very heavy hitting Pokemon, right? 40 with damage, but 30 more for each evolution Pokemon on your bench. So now we can actually go full evolution on our bench and hit for a ton of damage with Training Arena. It's a very hard-hitting Pokemon. I really do like this deck list. It's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like, there's so much stuff going on, but there's so much healing. You know, there really is. And then if you have to go through, you know, an Espeon or an Indeedee or whatever, and then you also have to go through a Mega Altaria, like, it's a tall task. It really is. So, you know, decks like this are really fun. I know doesn't really fit here on the screen. I'll go like this so you can kind of see all the cards. It's definitely a very crazy deck list, but as we see in here, 6-2-1 had a pretty respectable record at the tournament, so I wanted to highlight it. You know, it's definitely kind of fun, yeah, nothing else to really say, you know what I mean, about this deck list. So anyway, there you go, guys. That's the video. A lot of really cool decks, honestly. I think that a lot of the stuff in that we talked about today is realistically like viable in the metagame. And I know people are like, oh, you know, sure, I get it, you know, I did well one time, but like some of these decks are doing well consistently. They really are, and you have to keep your eye on it because the metagame goes beyond those top few decks, you know, at the top of the play rates, you know, in the meta share. So anyway, that's the video, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know it's a Friday, so you got to go ahead and play in PMPT tomorrow. We'll be live tomorrow as well as Sunday. I'm trying to go live for ranked either tonight or a night soon here, just to kind of hang out and play some ranked battles. Very busy lately, so my time is you know, I'm less free than I would like to be, but hopefully we go live here pretty soon. Maybe tonight. I don't know. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. You'll hear it. You'll hear about it. But anyway, guys, that's the video. Peace out. Have a good one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you guys later. And yeah. Bye.